Salute.
Martial Law
Attention.
Productions.
Salute.
Outlaw RBG. Salute.
Come on. Liberation. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living.
RBG. Salute.
We all living. Hit him. Get him. Freedom. We all living. You in the room with a great grand maroon. Make you take a stand or make you stand and assume position of your doom. Let you broke out cocoon with the vision from the womb. The mission I consume. I sever the agenda of chasing women in cheddar. Bob and weave till we receive something better. They're flying off the feather of heathen to the letter. No deceiving, conceiving, leaving, they fetter. The situation I endeavor. No victim, victorious, elevated netter. Leading as we leaving free together. Genius, I'm clever. Living liberation life forever. Right? Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him. Get him. Freedom. We all living. Hit him. Get him. Freedom. We all living. Freedom is the road. Travel seldom by the multitude. Giving. Living in debauchery and turbitude. I'm bringing word heard just to murk a few. Heard that disturbed the perfect view. Disintegrated systems that don't work for you. This ain't living when you living in a servitude. Ye God, tell me how that's serving you. Eating food that they serving that's hurting you. I'm in the kitchen cooking purpose food. Sweet it up. Colonizer get the fire with gratitude. Unsubdued cooking whooping cracker barbecue. Revolt or die from what the devil constitute. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him high, hit him. Get him high, get him. Get him. I ain't gon' stop till I'm liberation living. Hit him. Get him. Freedom. We all living. Hit him. Get him. Freedom. We all living.
Good evening. Tonight, we go inside the high-stakes battle for the Georgia governor's mansion, a seat Democrats haven't held since 1998. While the 2026 field is crowded with high-profile talent, they face a daunting structural reality, a Republican legislative trifecta that has spent decades fortifying the Gold Dome. Even the state's massive $15 billion to $17 billion surplus, a historic war chest, remains theoretically inaccessible, locked behind a legislative wall that requires more than just a victory speech to scale. The candidates are no longer just running against each other, they are running against a clock of generational neglect. Top Democratic issues framing for 2026 are cost of living and overall affordability, including housing, healthcare, wages, are consistently cited as a top concern. Education and opportunity, including K-12 quality, higher education access, and workforce pathways. Also, public safety and neighborhood crime, which is strongly linked to economic and community stability. Voting rights/election administration and democracy protection are especially salient in Georgia because of SB 202 and recent fights over election rules. For Democratic primary electability, the most relevant cross-cutting issues are affordability/economy, education/opportunity, and democracy/voting rights, with crime/public safety often framed through justice plus community investment. Stay tuned for the Outlaw Radio Podcast with Big Nel Obuya as we discuss who actually has a strategy. Georgia Governor race and Secretary of State breakdown. Salute.
Salute 1 2 1 2. Salute 1 2 1 2. Yeah. We back in this thing, man, for Outlaw Radio. It's your boy, Big Nel Obuya. Shout out to the ancestors. 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 Shout out to Malik Kalam. Shout out to Tulu Shakur, Afeni Shakur, Tupac Shakur, Asada Shakur. Shout out to all your personal ancestors. Shout out to all of your national ancestors. Gotta give time for the ancestors, y'all. Welcome back to Outlaw Radio. It's your boy Big Nel Obuya. Back in the space, back in the place to be. We trying some new stuff, man. I'm trying to use my AI muscle a little bit more. Got my AI spokesperson speaking for me on this joint, man. So that's where the intro comes from. Shout out to the AI. Shout out to also the Legal Defense Fund, man. They just released an article about your boy, just talking about the black joy that we bring to the classroom, working to still provide the content that has much trepidation in this country so far. So shout out to them. Shout out to Legal Defense Fund. Also, man, shout out to Son the Great. Just dropped some new music. Shout out to Red Fidel, who just dropped some new music. Andre 360 just dropped some new music. It's a bunch of folks from B.I.G, man, dropping new music. So shout out to the whole B.I.G crew. Salute. A lot of folks doing their thing. Keep your eyes open and eyes peeled for the Team RBG, the State of Black Emergency project coming out. It's more than just a mixtape. It's also going to be some literary works coming with that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Shout out to Team RBG. Also, you know, I got my hat. I got my Let Us Make Man hat popping today. We deep in the Let Us Make Man season, so you know what that is. We are getting ready to not only present some wonderful workshops that are going to be highly beneficial for our community and for our people, but we also raising money to send young men to college. If you want more information about that, go to letusmakeman.net. Letusmakeman.net. To get more information on how you can support sending a young man to college, whether it's just giving a general donation, you could purchase a ticket to the gala. We have the Let Us Make Man Gala that's going to be April 30th. So if you want to come to that, you could buy one ticket. You could buy a table. You could sponsor a table. So even if you're not planning on showing up, you still could put some money down, which could go a long way for sending young black men to college. Also, if you want to help us raise money, if you know people that you want to get contact or connected rather to what we're doing and get them fully invested, feel free to do that as well. There's spots for that. That's all available on letusmakeman.net. Shout out to Too Raw for TV. We got the Conscious Kickball game coming up on April 4th. I will actually be DJing at that joint, which I'm excited for. Got some new equipment. Got some new equipment coming, you know. Had to upgrade a little bit. That's why y'all hadn't really seen me do a whole lot of mix shows. Cause I was like, man, you know what? The mixes, they decent, but I really want to take it up a level. So I'm gonna get a live element to it. I'm actually gonna be looking for some spots to set up at. So anybody interested in having a DJ come set up and making your shit hot, hit your boy up. Primarily when I DJ, my sets is, I do a lot of Afro house, real big on the retro hip hop. So retro hip hop, when I say retro hip hop, you got old school hip hop, which is the music from the 80s and early 90s. And I consider retro like late 90s to 2010s. Late 90s and 2010s, that's retro hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not quite old school. It's old, but it's not old school. Like, it's not Curtis Blow. You know what I'm saying? So that's my retro hip hop space, and that's where I normally kind of spin as well. If y'all like other stuff, just let me know. I can get in there with it. R&B, old school, samba. I'm real big on all that too. But that's all the extra stuff, man. That's all the extra stuff. I'm just I'm glad to be back in the spot for the Outlaw Radio. It took a little hiatus, man, because we've really been working on some projects, man. For one, working on really scaling the business work that Running Back Media does. On Monday, and if you're listening to this in the playback, you probably just have to go online to find out more information about this. But on Monday, March 16th, Running Back Media will be hosting a workshop to help small businesses to scale their revenue, to increase their revenue and increase their engagement when it comes to their website as well as their web presence. So that's what we're here for. We're here to help the small business owners on the 16th of March. So look out for that. And if y'all have not been to the website lately, the Running Back Media website has been updated. I'm gonna show y'all real quick. When you go to the website, you can actually chat with our chat bot now. So you can ask RBGPT, the Street Scholar engine, and then it gets you started on any questions that you have for your small business. Also, too, of course, the site still is a beautiful site, giving you the option to book your calls ASAP, giving you more information about what we do here at Running Back Media, the start off pricing, and if you got some stuff that you're working on, we'll see how we can kind of work it out. A lot of times we create custom packages for people, but starting off coming in the door, that's what our prices are. And then of course, we got the 10-point digital readiness checklist that we allow people to download and use for their businesses. And then the RBGPT actual access is right here. You can launch that. And launching that, of course, will take you here to RBGPT. It's low, kind of slow. I was working on something. But yeah, that'll take you to RBGPT. So we in the building, y'all. I gave y'all a whole lot without even giving you all a Street Scholar report. So I guess I'm gonna give y'all a Street Scholar report. A lot of people haven't really been paying attention fully as to what's been going on with these wars. I think a lot of folks that I've been talking to, a lot of folks that I've been talking to and hearing from, they've been kind of real general with the knowledge that they have, not fully understanding what's going on. And it's easy to not understand what's going on because the American media has been real good about selling a particular narrative. But one thing that I found is I've gotten my news when it comes to like international affairs and strategic affairs and all that kind of stuff. I get that internationally. I don't get that from the US because American media is biased. American media uses propaganda, and that's part of the reason why it's important for you all to continue to support Outlaw Radio Podcast and make it more conducive for us to bring you all that uncut, raw content, because the content that you're going to get from mainstream media is going to be watered down either by the left or by the right. And one of these days I'm going to go really deep into why that's problematic. But for the most part, totalitarianism is a concept that the left embraces, and fascism is a concept that the right embraces. But they're both authoritarianist concepts. See, the way totalitarianism works, they want to control everything you do and create norms for you. So that comes in the form of policing your speech. So yeah, there's freedom of speech, but not quite freedom of speech, because you can't say certain things, you be canceled, so on and so forth. Allowing non-parents and non-family members to have access and say so to children, to be able to make medical decisions, help these children make medical decisions without their parents. That's all part of totalitarianism. This whole mindset of you don't have to work, not having to work. You know, I hear people all the time who are real big about destroying capitalism, and I ask them, what would replace it? And they're like, well, we just wouldn't work. Nobody would need to work. Everybody would just, everybody would do for each other, and we would. It's like, okay, all right. If nobody works, somebody's gonna have to do stuff that they don't want to do to make stuff accessible continually for everybody, because otherwise everybody would just they'd be taking care of their own stuff, and the quality of life would drop drastically. I'm not sure if most people are really ready for that type of lifestyle and that type of reality. So, I really don't think that people want to have that conversation, but they keep saying that on the left, people that I talk to. But anyway, that's totalitarianism. They want to control everything for you. So it's almost like we're controlling it, but we're doing you a favor, right? You don't have to think about this stuff. Fascism, on the other hand, is this whole idea that we are greater, like our side is greater, and because our side is greater, we need to control everything. So in America, fascism shows up as it's no longer just white supremacy. Like, just saying white supremacy would be simplifying it a little bit too much. It's white American supremacy. It's like white America is more superior than anybody else. And that really falls into the cultural nationalist concept that the white political thought often attains to. And then there's this whole conversation around, is America subject to Jerusalem? Is America subject to Israel? Because right now, America's in the Iran war. This is all what this comes back to. America's in the Iran war, and a lot of people are saying that this war is really Israel's war that America's fighting. And we're trying to find different justifications to justify why America is in it. So people say, well, Iran, they chant death to America. That's one of their chants. But it's like, it's a lot of people all over the world who hate America. And whether they televise their chants or not, I'm sure they're chanting somewhere. So, death to America isn't very unique for people who live in America, just so y'all know. But outside of that, even with that, okay, then they say, well, they're building a nuclear weapon. And I always have this position where, okay, they might be. America has a nuclear weapon. Israel has a nuclear weapon. Russia, North Korea, China. I mean, a lot of people have one. So for Iran to have one, I think the concern would be if they have one, then they could actually pose a threat. But really what it is if they have one, they'll be able to balance out the world power. A lot of people don't know this, but Iran and Israel, along with America, used to all be like allies. They were allied countries, because Iran which is unique in the Middle East, isn't a country of Arabs. They're Persian. Iran is what formerly is known as Persia. So their ethnicity is a little bit different than the ethnicity of the Arabs. And because of that, their different ethnicity, as well as the Israeli different ethnicity, made for a good opportunity for America to align themselves with non-Arab people so they can have allies in the region. That's part of what went into the puppet government that got overthrown in 1979 in Iran, and after that, Iran went into the Arab Revolution, which made Iran then an enemy to America and Israel from that perspective. So, but anyway, but that's the left. And then the right, like I said, they're fascist. So they're like, white America over everything and this and that. And that bleeds a lot into the politics as well. So you'll even see people who are black and Latino who will still allow some of that supremacy to creep into their rhetoric of nationalism. It's a spiritual thing. It's really not their fault. But what happens is, if you don't have thought leadership, if you don't have somebody to kind of steer the garden a little bit, whether they're going to be demonized in public or not, if you don't have somebody doing that, then you're just going to have the loudest, wrongest voice steering the conversation. And right now, you have the loud minority, which are people who the only reason why their concept of what we talk about is, grandiose, is because nobody else is saying anything. You have the loud minority speaking for the silent majority. And I'll give you an example. One example of that is this whole foundational Black American conversation, this FBA conversation. A lot of people are turned off by the conversation because they have an issue with Tariq Nasheed. And I'll say his name today because I think it's important to just, take the elephant out the room. So people have an issue with Tariq Nasheed because they believe that his perspective is divisive when it comes to foundational Black American. And they can't separate the concept and the lineage mindset of FBA from Tariq Nasheed. So that's where the cognitive dissonance is. It's like you can't even say FBA without somebody having a problem with it. I got a verse in that May Netzer song where I said foundational Black American engaged in war, African be the heritage that came to shores, macking and I'm down for player shit that pays me more. But I said foundational Black American engaged in war, and people were offended. And I'm like, what are you offended by? Like, what are you really offended by? I'm gonna do a breakdown of my verse just so I can put it out there what everything I'm saying in that verse and really break it down, because I go heavy on a lot of concepts in that verse. It's very there's a lot of was it double entendres and triple entendres and whatever. I won't belabor the Street Scholar Report, y'all. But yeah, just know that there's escalating tensions in Iran. A lot of this is affecting the gas prices. So if you're seeing your gas prices go up, that's why. I had a couple of months ago said that gas prices were going to go down because America now has control of Venezuela. But with all of what's going on in Iran, that's just going to really cancel that out, because they don't have the ability to process all the crude oil in Venezuela quite as fast. America's not going to run out of oil, and they're not going to run out of gas, but the price is going to go up. So that's what that's going to look like. If this war goes on longer than 6 months, then you will start to see some gas shortages. It'll definitely come up as election conversation, dealing with this gas shortage and so on and so forth. So keep an eye out on that. There's a lot more I can go into on this Iran stuff. but we just don't have time today. We're not even talking about that today. Today we're talking about local elections in the state of Georgia. And then I can't recall whether or not I mentioned the terrorist attack, the person out in Texas who shot them people. I don't think I mentioned it because it might have happened right after the war started, and I think we didn't do a show that week. So yeah, so shout out to the folks in Texas. I hope y'all doing all right, man. I got to get more information about that because I did mean to mention it. It was out in Austin, Texas, I believe. I think 4 people lost their life. Terrorist attacks are never fun. They're never funny, especially in the kind of climate that we're in now. And this is even more reason for us to cut the bullshit on dividing ourselves on pettiness and really start to unite on what we can. I had an interesting conversation. I've been having a few interesting conversations with some folks on the continent of Africa. And they really give me like a different perspective when it comes to race and connectedness. Because in Africa, they don't quite have the same issues that we have here in the States. Like here in America, it's the one drop rule. So it don't matter how white you think you are, you black. You African from somewhere else or whatever, you come here, you black. And they even turning folks from India black these days. Kamala Harris, they considering her black, even though she doesn't have any black in her body. She has like Indian, and then there's like the Carib blood, which that's not African blood. And then they're like, well, what makes you black? Good question, because what does make you black? In America, the whole conversation around foundational Black American delineates specifically what makes a foundational Black American. But what really makes you black is where the confusion comes in. And I think that's part of the reason why it's important to let us have that conversation of FBA, and actually let's expand the conversation of FBA so that it can clarify some of that stuff here in America, and our conversations about race make more sense. In South Africa, for example, like there's black South Africans, but then you have South Africans who are mixed with like black and white that don't consider themselves black, Indian and white, black and Indian, all that kind of stuff. And none of these folks consider themselves black. I think that was I forget her name, but she was a singer. She said she was colored. A lot of folks had a problem with that. Like, America doesn't really set the standard for race. We just have our standards for race. And if somebody comes from another country and they have a different standard for race, I don't think they should be put down for that. I think it's really incumbent upon us to learn about their culture so that we don't make such a big deal out of some bullshit. But I digress. And that's our Street Scholar Report. That's our Street Scholar Report. So we've been talking about, Georgia elections and really kind of going into like what some of the issues are. Trying to bring the music down a little bit. To have it on a little bit. All right. So yeah, talking about what some of the issues are, some of the things that we need to look at, some factors that are really big in our foreground for the Georgia election. They just had the elections, the primary elections in Texas, I believe, and Jasmine Crockett. I think that she was supposed to be like everybody's favorite for the next standout Democratic star darling. Yeah, she didn't win. And, there's a lot of comments about her as a politician and, people hating on her because she's a black woman. I really wish that we'd have a little bit more political sophistication so that it doesn't always have to get to a point where when somebody doesn't win an election, the first thing that we do is we spend the bulk of our time. I'm not even saying to not question it, because it's always good to question what's going on. If you want to have a question as to whether or not people didn't vote for her because of her race or her gender, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you spend the bulk of your conversation and the bulk of your time, you want to die on that sword and you want to say that that's the reason why she lost the election, I think that's irresponsible. But not just irresponsible, but it also it means that you don't really want to take any time to think about the election. Because thinking about the election would mean you'd have to look at some of the factors that go outside of the simple black men didn't vote for Jasmine Crockett, because statistically speaking, the reason she lost was because she didn't win the Latino vote. And part of the criticism, the critique that people had for her was all of the work that she was doing around electoral politics that benefited the immigrants. And they didn't turn around and show her much for that. And that just shows to go you, man, that, you know, us as black people, we keep telling you, like, you appealing to everybody else. Stop doing that, because they're not gonna propel you anywhere. You got to get us out to vote. I think black people in America are one of the only groups that are having a net positive in terms of population growth, which that means that there are more young people available to vote. We got to get them out to come vote, and you're not going to get them out with the same stuff that got folks out when Obama ran for president. And they think that for whatever reason, the Democrats think that the Obama technique is going to work in this generation, and it just doesn't, man. It just doesn't. But I digress. Anyway, so a 10-point strategy audit framework that you have to look at when it comes to any election, but this election in particular, is coalition math, fundraising infrastructure, legislative strategy under GOP control. So how you gonna make moves when you got the opposition party controlling things? Having an economic plan, specificity. How you say that? SB 202 structural awareness, rural strategy, suburban strategy, youth and tech engagement, crisis readiness, and institutional team depth. So those are 10 things that you need to audit in your election strategy to make sure that you are on point, to make sure you can actually win this election. And I actually got this presentation today because I felt like this topic is kind of heavy, and when we on topics like this, I don't want to lean on what I know only and hope that you all can get what I know from what based on that conversation. A lot of the information that we're going to be addressing comes from that. So this is from these candidates' own mouth. Winning requirements. So there are 3 things that we got to address when it comes to winning this race. Excuse me. The structural majority in the legislature is one. The deep rural baseline advantage is another issue, and business stability messaging is another one. Now, so for the first one, the structural majority in legislature. When you have a majority in the legislature that is Republican, it's going to be really incumbent upon you to be a politician and reach across the aisle. I think we've gotten into this whole mode where we elect Democrats who don't reach across the aisle, but their whole thing is fighting across the aisle. They're swinging across the aisle. People in districts are electing representatives into the legislature whose whole deal is, I'm going to fight Donald Trump. I'm going to fight such and such. I'm going to fight this and that. And that's unsustainable for a party. That's why on the side note, That's why they were at Jesse Jackson's funeral, disrespecting that man. And I mean, I get it. I know Jesse Jackson was known to be an opportunist. That was one of the things he was known for. I get it. I understand. So believe me, I understand. And two, you know, them folks went in that man's funeral, and I don't even think some of them even said Jesse Jackson's name. They were talking about Donald Trump more than they were talking about Jesse Jackson. And it just shows to go you, man, like being somebody who is a civil rights icon, your job is never done. Like they still using Dr. King to this day. They keep digging him up and using him for their tactics. And they're trying to structure the civil rights movement and attach it to the Democratic Party. The problem with that is it was a movement. It wasn't a party movement. It was a people's movement. It was a movement of the black people, of the foundational black American people who wanted to have equal rights and civil liberties and human rights in America. That's what that is. So it wasn't until later that the political parties actually started to get involved legislatively and pass laws that benefited the movement, because the movement started with the movement work. The Montgomery bus boycott, the sit-ins, the freedom rides, like that's the movement. So the Democratic Party they don't have ownership of that movement, nor were they the architects of that movement. So it's quite disrespectful for them to do that. They think that that's going to get them, going to keep them the black vote. They think that's all they got to do to have the black vote and have the minority vote. And it's just not working, man. It's really getting sad and desperate at this point. Deep rural baseline advantage. Now that's one of those things where it's like, it's coded speak. Basically, in the deep rural areas of Georgia, it's full of people who dislike black people, dislike immigrants, dislike gays, dislike anybody that's not them. Some of them are gay, so I don't even understand why they do that. But anyway, they dislike everybody that's not them. And because of that, and because of the fact that in a lot of these areas, the education isn't quite to where it needs to be. Remember, I told you all about the education the other day. Because that's the case, these people are very easy to influence. So the deep rural baseline advantage speaks to the fact that all you got to do is rile them up with anger and look like them, and you're going to get the vote. So you have to organize against that organizing principle. And then you have the business stability messaging. Now, this is important because businesses bring jobs. And there's something about bringing jobs that also brings votes, right? So if you can be the person responsible for bringing jobs to a particular area that didn't have jobs before, people are more apt to vote for you when it's election time, as opposed to not. The Democrats just don't have an answer for that piece. They don't really have an answer for how to create jobs. They keep, whenever you have like a forum or a debate or some space for Democrats to talk about this particular issue, they always kind of, deflect it. They deflect it to something else and start to blame somebody else for why their thing didn't work. So that happens a lot. But you got the high metro Atlanta density, geographic growth, which speaks to the democratic math. So they really got a lot to lean on with the metro Atlanta area. Warnock style suburban coalition requirement. So one of the things that Raphael Warnock was good at for his campaign was they presented him as like the new fresh Atlanta, a new fresh face in Atlanta, but still kind of had that old school, that old Atlanta church connection, that familiar perspective that is it brings it home in Atlanta, brings it home in the state of Georgia. So you need that. But also to be able to communicate to the suburbanites and let them know that it's not going to be a problem, y'all. We good. We just want to be like y'all. And then the heavy reliance on turnout spikes. So they're going to really have to heavily rely on having different spikes where people are coming out to vote based on activity from the grassroots and from media. You're definitely going to have to get people to utilize their off time. So anytime you got off days during the election period, those are going to be really strong days to work people to the poll. Republicans have a lot of leverage though when it comes to the county. If it ends up close, then it's one of those things where it's probably going to just end up red, because there's a lot of things that are stacking in the favor of the Republicans. Now, there's three pillars that are the primary things that will define your electability, and one of them is where you stand when it comes to affordability and healthcare. A lot of folks were talking about expanding Medicaid, addressing 90% preventable maternal mortality rate, and lowering the baseline cost of living. And that 90% preventable maternal mortality rate, that alone is staggering. 90% is crazy. 90% preventable maternal mortality, that means that more often than not, when the mother does pass away, somebody could have did something to keep it from happening, and they didn't. You definitely need more legal folks on that one, because there has to be some lawsuits filed. You got to put some people out of business for stuff like that. 90% is ridiculous. 90%, come on, man. And it also goes to this whole idea where like people, they treat black women in a way where they don't listen to them. It's hard to really get people to acknowledge the pain that you all are feeling. They make it seem like, well, it's not that big a deal. They say, where you at, scale of 1 to 10, you're on your pain. You say an 8, they're like, she's probably over exaggerating. She's probably under exaggerating, because black women love to, not be a burden on everybody. The ones with love in their heart, anyway. Then you got education and opportunity. Another issue that stands out in this election: reforming the 1985 QBE funding formula. This formula is out of date. I mean, come on, man! Like over 40 years out of date. This funding formula, and basically the way the funding formula works is every county gets the same amount of money. The problem with that is some counties need more money because they're dealing with more poverty issues. Some counties are larger, so they have to disperse the money differently. So it's not proportionate, it's just equal. And that goes to this whole thing about equality. Equal is it, people say, I want to be equal. You don't always want to be equal. I doubt most of y'all want to be equal who say that shit. Dismantling the school to prison pipeline also gotta happen, and then building modern workplace pathways. A lot of folks don't know how to get jobs. They don't know what to do once they're done in school. Like, once I'm done in school, then what? I guess I'm gonna start rapping. I'm gonna start trapping or something else goofy. I mean, not saying the rapping is goofy, but you don't start rapping because you don't know what else to do. You start rapping because you're good at it. Anyway, democracy and voting rights is another electability test that people are going to have to address. Building a structural defense against SB 202, which SB 202 allows for the federal government to do things like run up in voter office and take ballots like they did a couple months ago. And I mean, fucking with Trump, man, when you mess with Donald Trump, not like I'm like, don't mess with Donald Trump, but you just gotta know what you're dealing with when you mess with certain people. That's the art of war concept, I believe. Anyway, so we talked about Trump interference. Georgia is leaving $30 billion on the table with rural hospital collapse. This is an issue that was talked about by a few of the candidates. Some of the call outs around that were from Jason Estevez, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Olu Brown, and Michael Thurman. The crisis that we're talking about is Georgia's refusal to expand Medicaid and how it is decimated rural health infrastructure and created massive coverage gaps. The state sits on a $14 billion surplus while families face astronomical premiums. So the state got money, they just don't want to use it on you. And see, so the Democratic side sees money and is like, okay, that's taxpayer money, let's use it for taxpayers. The Republican side says, okay, we got taxpayer money, let's not spend that money and use it for something that's important. This is just where your what's important to you shows up. Because if black people aren't important, then you're not going to see this as an issue or a reason to break out that bread. A 1985 educational funding formula cannot build a 2026 workforce. This is a quote. This goes to what I was telling y'all earlier about the 1985 QBE formula. And what happens is the local property tax ends up taking the burden. So what that looks like is people who own houses in certain areas end up paying higher property tax in order to offset the missing funds that they didn't properly get distributed to them because of this 1985 QBE formula. They got the school to prison pipeline because a lot of these students aren't learning anything in school. They don't know the reason. They're not understanding the reasoning behind them being there, except for, babysitting. Best way to say that. We're talking about defending more. Defending the democracy requires preparation against administrative warfare. So this is going to speak to Donald Trump and the FBI raids. Also, ICE intimidation has become up as an issue as well. People are expecting for ICE to be really heavy at elections, just because this whole idea that they believe that the illegal aliens are going to flood the election in order to help Democrats get back in office when they can't legally vote. That's kind of far-fetched, but I suppose whatever. You got state election board interventions. That's going to be the Secretary of State business right there. They got to, really address that for real. When you're mapping the gubernatorial field by strategic lane, we got to look at the executive experience. Who has executive experience? And that will fall under people like Keisha Lance Bottoms and Michael Thurman. Who is a fighter? Who's willing to fight for legislature? And they have grassroots connections. So the grassroots and the legislative fighters, this Roma, Derek Jackson, and Olu Brown are all considered that. People who are the coalition and policy challengers would be considered Jeff Duncan and Jason Estevez. And you don't really see somebody who is not just a base energizer, but also a broad coalition builder that also has executive experience. See, the executive experience and being a broad coalition builder, that's something that doesn't go together. That's why I was telling you all the other day about the three Atlantas, because you got the one Atlanta who have the executive experience and they have that corporate connection and that corporate speak. But in terms of building a broader coalition than the people that they had to connect with in order to get that, that tends to be an issue. So that's definitely a field gap for the folks who are running now. Now, just to get more specific with our candidates. So Keisha Lance Bottoms, on first take, actually was one of my favorites because I was like, oh, I know her. She was the mayor of Atlanta, and she didn't do that bad of a job. And based on prior mayors, you know, she actually didn't get arrested or didn't have a scandal. So shout out to her. And I was like, giving her props. Yeah, so she definitely has strong name recognition in the Metro Atlanta. Her credibility lies into the place of policing, criminal justice, and public safety. And that's actually gonna be one of her negatives as well, because this whole Cop City thing, man, that's like an anvil on her ankle when it comes to the grassroots in Atlanta. They will not touch her from putting together that Cop City piece. But also too, Atlanta's record still wasn't that great in terms of crime rates, homelessness, city management, having issues. So a lot of Republicans are going to tie that to her branding, and they're going to say, you don't want that for the whole state of Georgia. So yeah, they're going to say you don't want her to bring her Atlanta style crime, so to speak. Michael Thurman, that's like the old school, you know what I'm saying? Oh, y'all know me now. Y'all know me. You know, when they start off like that, then you need to read between the lines. 'Cause a lot of times they're saying that because they want you to drop your guard. But he was the former state labor commissioner, the CAB CEO, which is great. Now he has, like I said, the black base in terms of the older black communities really tied in with the state and the county government management. He's older, so why somebody would want to run as an older person, let alone vote for somebody who's older, normally is an issue for me. But you know, if that's all you got, which I don't think that's all we got, but he's running as well, and he's kind of considered a career politician, which, you know, sometimes these politicians kind of have that career politician vibe. You can really pick it up if you're in tune with it, or you're in tune, period. But yeah, so that's that. Jeff Duncan. Jeff Duncan's the white boy. I don't say that to be derogatory. He just happens to be white. Anyway, he's a former Republican lieutenant governor at that. He's running as a Democrat because he considers himself a centrist, and this is his post-Trump profile, aiming at building a broad coalition including Democrats, independents, and disaffected Republicans, those rhinos, those Republicans in name only. Like, he wants to turn them a new leaf. This recent party switch is kind of abrupt, so that's gonna be an issue for him. But also, there's no real plan. Like, he talks really good, but there's no real plan. So that's an issue for people. Just talking, and you just want our attention. Now when we give you attention, we ain't hearing shit. So, you know, there's that. Jason Estevez, state senator, in the Atlanta area, education and budget focus. So he's looking at the money. Former APS chair. So like I said, he has a background on education, local school board work, so on and so forth. And he definitely can position himself as the next generation of leadership in the Democratic Party. specifically considering himself a technocrat. I wonder if he considers himself a technocrat or if other people consider him in that. I would argue that I would never call myself a technocrat, even I'm sure somebody would consider me that because I have my hands tied in a lot of technology. But I digress. But anyway, Jason Estevez doesn't have the kind of name recognition that some of the other folks have. Also, he doesn't really stick. Like when he speaks, it doesn't really stick. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Who else got an opinion about this shit? And then you got Ruber Rahman, Derek Jackson, and Olu Brown as like the rest of the field. I will say about Ruber Rahman, she's probably got the strongest ground game in terms of grassroots organizing. Like she's probably the strongest on that. Her demographic also is energizing to the young liberal people of Georgia. So she represented a demographic that is ready to be charged up. They're ready to have something to kind of run for. She keeps it local as well. She keeps it local, which is kind of like a drawback because if you're going to be governor, you need to be able to look at the world from a small lens of how does this affect my state, but you also really have to be able to have a broader look at the world as opposed to just opposing the president. Because as a state representative, you think that she'd have more things to talk about. I mean, she's a Muslim. She's the first Muslim woman elected to Georgia House. So you think that she'd have more to talk about when it comes to civil liberties and voting rights, but she does. That's her thing. But I would focus on that and even have like a national version of what that looks like on a talking point, as opposed to making the national conversation be about Donald Trump. And then there's Derek Jackson. You see on the slide there, Derek Jackson, Olu Brown is like the same dude. I think AI felt the same way I felt. Like, you know, these dudes kind of matter, but not really. Derek Jackson is a state representative. He's a funny dude in terms of him talking. He has a few jokes. Literally, he's funny. So, and Olu Brown, I believe, I think he said he was a preacher, something like that. He's preached. So he can really get the faith community out. And that just kind of shows the goal. You got different folks who can get different people out. You got the faith community that can come out. You got the grassroots that can come out. You know what I mean? You got the old Black Atlanta. You got the new Black Atlanta. You got people who can relate to the middle, the disaffected. And then you got folks who dealing specifically in education and helping stuff go the way it needs to go in that realm. It just makes for the type of coalition that, in my opinion, would be undefeatable. But these folks, they just want to be the one, man. They want to be the one. The infrastructure test. So mobilizing the 1.3 million unengaged voters. A lot of people who not voting, y'all. And Ruben Roman says that for every Trump voter we got in 2024, we lost 4 of our own. 3 of them on the couch. In terms of top-down penetration, Bottoms definitely has the lead on that. Ground up, field development, that's definitely Roman. And then just the financial velocity is going to be Duncan. That's the white person. So he's going to get the most money. Bottoms is going to get the most top-down penetration from like the infrastructure, and then Roman's going to get the most ground-up support from her grassroots organizing. It's just a matter of which one of these strategies is going to be the most effective in making things happen for them to win their respective election. Secretary of State, I guess we can get this in right quick. We running behind on time. We running over a little bit. But this is a heavy topic, so we got a little bit more to talk about. With Secretary of State, that's important because they are the ones who are the shield. They guard the election. So they're responsible for the ballot preparation, voter registration, SEB chairmanship, as well as the final certification of the election, SEB standing for State Election Board. The true power of the office, not just counting the votes, but they oversee the infrastructure that allows votes to be counted. So they're going to make sure everything is counted properly. Post SB 202 reality, with the State Election Board empowered to suspend county boards and limit private funding, the Secretary of State must navigate extreme layered leverage at the county level. So there's a lot that they got to work on judicially in order to pass things. And I think what they're doing is let me not go on that thought. That thought was on another trail. But anyway, mandate. Y'all keep hearing this word mandate. Trump said there was a mandate. Democrats need a candidate who understands administrative performance, reviews risks, and certification timelines, not just broad protection democracy talking points. So they got to actually be about like trying to have a way to manage this stuff, man. It can't just be somebody who they sound good and they're promising to not let Trump make them cave in. They have to actually bring something to the table. You got Dana Barrett, who is administrative executive. She's kind of leaning into the county commission and corporate competence piece. She's very pro transparency, crisis communication skills, her top tier, and she has crossover economic appeal. Then you got Judge Penny Reynolds. She's a rule of law defender. So she's going to come through with a deep legal background to counter the softer narrative on fraud. She has a strong older voter base. It's just a matter of do we want to anchor the Democratic Party in the legal integrity and established authority that she has, or are we going to go into a different direction? Which Adrian Conessery, I wonder how you say that, Conessery Jr. Anyway, they're the change advocate, and they're talking about energizing the youth and rural voters through a powerful personal disenfranchisement narrative. So whole different narrative. These are three totally different narratives. Two of these folks are black running against each other. And the narratives matter because we're going to see which narrative is the narrative that is the leading narrative for what's going to happen in the state of Georgia. Matter make sure the campaigns build concrete legal defense preparations. Make sure that is there a county level monitoring for the tech strategy in place. In other words, you just have to make sure that you are checking all of the boxes, crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. Because if campaigns are not explicitly answering these questions, they're selling a brand, not strategy. So if a campaign can't really look at, how we addressing the crisis timelines on the state election board is anticipating, if they can't answer the mathematical path to suburban demographic crossover, if they don't know that an economic redistribution plan that they can refer to for the rural areas, they can't answer that, then they're really unelectable. So what's our final assessment? The 2026 Democratic primary field possesses immense talent, deep executive experience, and undeniable grassroots energy. All separate things that are doing it separately, so they're not doing it together. And they really need to connect with that. Overcoming the structural legislative minority and the looming apparatus of SB 202 requires absolute strategic foresight. They gotta have the foresight to come together. Voters must stop asking who they like the best and start demanding to know who is structurally prepared to execute. Because I can't, with a sound mind and conscious soul, just vote for Keisha Lance Bottoms because she was the mayor of Atlanta and she was cool and she cute and all that. That's not a good reason. You know, those aren't good reasons, y'all. Not at all. So I say that to say, yeah, that's where we at, y'all. But anyway, hope y'all got something from this. Hope y'all were able to kind of pick up the concepts. Like I said, we coming heavy with this right now. So I think the next couple shows, I'm gonna go into a little bit of more conjecture and keep it a little bit lighter. But you definitely are prepared for whatever you need when it comes to the 2026 election at this point. Between this show and the 3 Atlanta show, you really got what you need to prepare for that. Hit us up though, runitbackmedia.com, runitback no K, because we can help you as a small business if you're working on trying to engage this political process. We can help you to be able to keep your revenue flowing as you build and negotiate this new environment and plan things, and so we can help you with that. We can also help bring some clarity to you with the Black Media Reset.lovable.com. That's definitely going to help you have some exercises on how to bring things to a cool, so to speak. But on my final word, just to close us out, you know, it's easy to, living in America, it's easy to fall in this thing where there are people that we like, people that we admire, we believe are like, what would we call them? Our heroes. For lack of better words, these people are our heroes. And it's possible to go through our lives looking up to these heroes, liking these heroes, referring to these heroes, quoting them, all kind of stuff, being proud of these heroes. And then in life, as it normally does for every human, some of these heroes make mistakes. How do you respond when your hero, when you find out that your hero is actually a human being? They make mistakes. They might not always be at the highest level of execution. They might actually do something that's negative. They might do something rude or do something mean. How do you react? Do you then just throw out the whole mess of wisdom and knowledge and understanding you received from this person? Do you dismiss this person as a fraud or a charlatan? You disrespect this person and put them down because you believe that they are less of now because they no longer have the level of respect they had before that mistake? Like, who are you to look at somebody else's mistake and then look down on them when we all make mistakes every day? Every day we're alive, we make a mistake on something. We're making a mistake on which way to turn, mistake on which way to walk, what to say, what to do, how to do it. We make mistakes every day. And you're no better than anyone else's. And no mistake they make is worse than any of your mistakes. So we just got to get to the point that we don't crucify our leaders because they make mistakes. And if it's a mistake that we can't mess with, let it be that. That's cool. And two, man, don't down that horse, man. Don't down that sword, rather. Don't just make their mistake all you talk about for the rest of the year. Because you just show that you don't have any depth of knowledge and character. But anyway, it's Outlaw Radio. signing off. Street Scholar studies coming soon. Make sure you go to the Patreon page to support the Outlaw Radio Podcast. We can't do it without you. So definitely shout out to y'all. We live in a stolen government on stolen land, so we speak stolen language. Outlaw RBG Salute.